November 17, 1965. The first time a North Vietnamese pilot lined up behind a Republic F-105 Thunderchief and lived to brief it, the lesson he carried home was simple. The big American jet was a bomb truck. It was heavy, it was fast in a straight line, and it could not turn. A MiG-17 could outturn it inside its own length. A MiG-21 could climb above it and fall on it from the sun. The Thunderchief had been built to carry a nuclear bomb into the Soviet Union at treetop height and Mach 2, not to dogfight. Its own commander, General William Momyer of the 7th Air Force, called it a very poor plane in a dogfight. The North Vietnamese sent their best interceptor pilots up to hunt it. Between June 1966 and the end of 1967, those pilots lost 27.5 of their fighters to it. Almost all of them died making the same decision. To understand the decision, you have to understand the airplane and the war it was dropped into. The F-105 carried the designation F for fighter. It was not one. Republic Aviation built it as a single-seat nuclear strike aircraft, optimized for one mission: fly low, fly fast, deliver a single bomb deep inside enemy territory, and outrun anything that tried to follow. Empty, it weighed around 27,000 pounds. It had stubby swept wings built for speed at low altitude, not for the slow, knife-edge turning of close combat. When the United States began bombing North Vietnam in 1965, the F-105 was the best tactical bomber the Air Force had for a limited conventional war. And so it flew the majority of the strike missions against the North from 1964 through 1968. The crews called it the Thud. The men who flew it were not fighter pilots in the dogfighting sense. They were strike pilots, loaded with bombs, flying fixed routes the North Vietnamese could predict and defend. The enemy waiting for them was a small air force that knew exactly what it was. North Vietnam's air arm had been formed in 1959 with cast-off equipment and a single defecting trainer aircraft. The Soviets did not hand over 36 MiG-15s and MiG-17s until February 1964, and the first MiG-21s did not arrive until late 1965. It was a tiny force flying obsolete and near-obsolete jets. The MiG-17 was an upgraded version of the Korean War MiG-15. It had no radar worth the name. Its weapons were cannon. One American instructor who later flew captured examples described the cockpit as having faucets, literal valves to turn systems on and off. It was crude, but below 5,000 feet, it could outroll and outturn every American aircraft in theater except the Navy's F-8. The North Vietnamese understood the math. They could not win a war of attrition against the number of aircraft the Americans could put in the sky. So they did not try. They chose when to fight. An Air Force assessment of the period stated it plainly. MiG pilots only attacked under ideal circumstances, when American aircraft were heavy with bombs, low on fuel, or already damaged. The small, hard-to-see MiGs made one fast pass and then ran for a sanctuary. That was the doctrine, not a turning fight, not a duel. One slashing, diving pass through a strike formation to scatter it and force the bombers to jettison their loads, and then disengagement at full speed back toward Hanoi, where American rules forbade pursuit. The rules were the second weapon. Air Force pilots could not attack the main MiG base at Phuc Yen until 1967. They could not touch Gia Lam at all. They could watch MiGs taxi out, run up their engines, and take off, and they were forbidden to fire until the enemy was airborne. The MiGs could flee across the Chinese border into airspace the Americans were ordered not to enter.
Visual identification was required before firing, which surrendered the F-105's ability to detect a MiG at 35 miles and erased the advantage of long-range missiles. By the time a Thud pilot could see the MiG well enough to legally shoot, the fight was already a close, twisting, low-speed brawl, the exact fight the heavy American jet was built to lose. On April 4, 1965, the doctrine worked perfectly. MiG-17s came up through thick haze, slipped past the F-100's flying cover, and shot down two F-105s attacking the Tan Hoa Bridge. The Thuds were carrying full bomb loads and could not react. They were the first confirmed aerial kills of either side, and they were a humiliation. The Air Force Chief of Staff, General John McConnell, was, by the account of a reporter at the time, hopping mad that two of America's most advanced aircraft had been bested by subsonic relics.
That was the lesson the North Vietnamese took in the next 3 years. The Thud cannot fight. Hit it when it is heavy. Make the pass, run. The error was in the second half. The pass worked, the running did not always happen. Because the Thunderchief had one quality the MiG pilots kept underestimating. Once it dropped its bombs and external tanks, it was one of the fastest aircraft in the sky at low altitude. It accelerated brutally. And it carried, mounted internally, an M61 Vulcan rotary cannon that fired 20mm shells at 6,000 rounds per minute. The early F-4 Phantoms sent to escort the F-105s had no gun at all. They carried missiles that were awkward and unreliable in a close turning fight. The clumsy bomb truck had the one weapon that worked at knife range. The mistake the MiG pilots made again and again was staying. A single high-speed pass was survivable, lingering to finish a damaged Thud, or turning back for a second firing run, or getting drawn into a low-altitude scissors against an F-105 that had already dropped its bombs. The MiG put in front of that cannon at the one moment the American jet's disadvantages no longer applied. A Thud that was no longer heavy, no longer slow, and pointed at you was not a bomb truck. It was a gun moving at 600 knots. April 19, 1967 is the day that shows it whole. 4 F-105Ds, call sign Panda Flight, had just bombed the Xuan Mai barracks near Hanoi. The flight was led by Captain William Gene Eskew. As they came off the target, two MiG-17s appeared ahead of them. The Thud pilots cleaned off their tanks and bomb racks and accelerated to 600 knots, sliding in behind the unsuspecting MiGs. Eskew set up to fire from 1,500 feet. The MiGs broke hard toward the target area, and Eskew adjusted, reacquired one over Hua Bin, and put cannon fire into its left wing route from about 800 feet. His wingman, Captain Paul Seymour, hit a second. Both MiGs racked into a turn no F-105 could follow and escaped. It was absolutely impossible for us to follow them through that turn, Eskew said afterwards. That was the MiG playing its own game correctly. Hit, turn, gone. The fight should have ended there. It did not, because of what came next, and what came next is the entire story of the F-105 against the MiG. A downed American pilot was on the ground. Panda Flight, nearly out of fuel, refueled and flew 200 miles back to fly cover for the rescue. When they arrived, a propeller-driven A-1E Sky Raider was being worked over by 4 MiG-17s, flying a coordinated pattern of individual passes. 3 of them, flown by VPAF officers, recorded only as Tan, Tho, and Trung. The Panda Thunderchiefs came in at 700 knots and drove straight through the swirling fight to scatter it. And now the MiGs made the mistake.
Instead of making one pass and leaving, they stayed to fight in a low, tight furball that dropped at times to 30 feet off the ground. Captain Howard Bodenhammer, Panda 3, rolled in behind a MiG and fired. He had slowed to 275 knots in a 6G turn to hold his aim, with another MiG firing at him from behind. He held it anyway and put rounds into the MiG-17's left wing and the fuselage behind its canopy. Eskew, with no one on his own tail, switched his armament from missiles to guns, pulled in behind a MiG that was chasing Panda 4, and drove it off with a burst, then used a high-speed yo-yo to avoid overshooting and resumed firing. He counted an estimated 50 to 75 strikes on the upper fuselage behind the canopy. The MiG rolled slowly, and then the air in front of Eskew turned to fire as it disintegrated. He pulled up so hard to avoid the debris that he was convinced he had rammed it and called over the radio that he himself was hit. He was not. The Thunderchief was undamaged. He went back into the fight. 2 MiGs were claimed destroyed that day. The other claims could not be confirmed because the gun cameras had failed, and the historian who reconstructed the engagement, Peter Davies, noted that working film might have raised the F-105's kill record by at least 2 more. The Thuds had come to dogfight the most maneuverable thing in the sky at 30 feet and walked away. What killed those MiGs was not American maneuvering. The F-105 still could not turn. What killed them was the moment the MiG pilots abandoned their own doctrine and tried to win a sustained fight against an airplane that, the instant it was light and fast, could put 6,000 rounds a minute exactly where it was looking. By the end of the F-105's air-to-air career, the tally was 27.5 MiGs destroyed. All of them were MiG-17s. 24.5 of those were killed with the cannon, not the missile. In the same window, the F-105's kill count against MiGs exceeded that of the very F-4 Phantoms assigned to protect it. The aircraft built to never fight outscored the fighters. It came at a price, and the honest figure matters more than the title. The North Vietnamese fighters shot down 17 F-105s in air-to-air combat, by the American count. North Vietnamese pilots claimed 23. This was not a massacre. It was something closer to even, a near-parity exchange between a bomber that could not maneuver and an interceptor that could not catch it once it ran. When the Air Force later flew secret Mach battles against an acquired MiG-21 in the program called Have Donut, the analysts confirmed in cold engineering language what the MiG pilots should have trusted. If the F-105 attacker tried a prolonged maneuvering engagement, it became vulnerable. In a turning fight, the energy advantage shifted to the MiG over time. The Thud's only winning move was speed, the slashing attack and the fast exit, the mirror image of the MiG's own correct tactic. When both sides did the disciplined thing, neither could close. The kills happened in the seconds when discipline broke, and 3 years it broke more often in the cockpit of the airplane that thought it had the easy target. Major Ralph Custer, Jr. of the 469th Tactical Fighter Squadron killed a MiG-17 with his cannon over North Vietnam on June 3, 1967, firing at point-blank range, hitting the left wing near the fuselage and watching it burst into flame as his F-105 passed feet beneath the burning aircraft. One Thunderchief, tail number 624284, flown on its one kill by Captain Gene Basil of the 354th Tactical Fighter Squadron, was officially credited with shooting down 3 enemy fighters, the only F-105 to do so. It survived the war and was lost years later in a peacetime training crash in Oklahoma. The North Vietnamese Air Force learned its own lesson eventually, and it was the right one. Stop trying to fight the Thud. make the pass, force the bombs off, and run for the sanctuary the Americans had handed them. The MiGs never stopped the strike forces from reaching their targets, from Rolling Thunder to the end. But they were never as generous as they had been in those low-turning fights where a heavy American bomb truck, empty and accelerating, proved that the slowest thing to fear in the sky is a gun that has finally been given a reason to point at you. The aircraft that was too clumsy to be a fighter shot down 27 MiGs and then was quietly retired in 1984. And there is no monument to the men in the MiG cockpits who learned, one firing pass too late, that the easy kill was looking back.